And there it goes. It pops in. That way I can see, because it'll say we are live. So we are now live and we are streaming. So we are good to go. Welcome, everyone. I officially call the April 15th, 2021 regular meeting of Franklin City School Board to order, and welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us tonight. First item on the agenda, do we have a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that the school board, having been in a closed session pursuant to a proper motion, come out of closed session.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, then we'll go by ward. Moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. Do we have a certification of our closed session?
Whereas the Franklin City School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Franklin City School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. Next up, we have motions from closed session. The only item that we had was a personnel agenda. Do we have any motions in regards to the personnel agenda?
I
move.
move.
The
Go ahead.
personnel agenda as presented.
We got a motion by Ms. Williams. Do we have a second? I think I heard Mr. Holt pop in and a few others.
I'll second or third, whatever.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Ms. Williams,
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
and Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. Next up, we have Pledge of Allegiance. Since we aren't in chambers and don't have the flag, Tammy has taken it upon herself, as always, to provide us with one. So if you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next up, 2.7, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Hope, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Terry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. Our agenda is approved. Next up is roll call. Ms. Moore, if you will lead us through that formality.
Sure. Robert Holt,
Present.
Amy Phillips,
Present.
Tanya Smith, Marshall Williams,
Present.
Dr. Andrea Shelton,
Present.
Jerry McCreary,
Present.
Carrie Johnson.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is citizens time. Ms. Moore, did we have anyone sign up or send in anything?
No, not at this time.
All right. That brings us down to item number 3, our consent agenda. We've got a few things out there. I'm going to try to do my best to explain. I may have to pull in some backup on that. First up is, excuse me, that would be my phone. First up is budget adjustment. Let me scroll down so I can see as well. So this is an increase. We received a security grant, which we'll hear a little bit more about that later as Mr. Ryder. Well, actually, there he is. School security equipment grant, $100,000, which is going to be, has to be utilized this fiscal year. It does require a 25% grant from the locality as well to purchase equipment. And I believe some of that is, will be discussed a little bit further down as well as to how that's going to be utilized. Oh, there you go. The alarm system, we've had conversations about that before, Mr. Ryder. I don't want to steal your thunder, so if you need to jump in, that's fine. We've had conversations about the alarm system and how outdated that is at the schools. We know that for a period, we did have to disable that because of the frequency of the false alarms that were going off at SP Morton. And of course, you know, given what we just went through a month ago at SP Morton with that small fire that was in conjunction with one of the units in the ceiling, which could have been bad if no one had been in the building and hadn't caught it and the alarm wasn't working. Now's a good time, especially with this grant, for us to update that equipment. Those panels are, as it says, they are 30 years old and they are old analog panels. Mr. Ryder, did you want to talk about the vendors and that vendor part?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Board Chair, good evening, everyone. It's funny sometimes when we send this stuff throughout the week, and sometimes you don't know how it's going to actually look until the actual board meeting. So I didn't know that this was going to be on the consent. So yeah, it was, there's two vendors that we tried to use for the installation of this thing. And the Johnson Controls is a vendor that continues to gobble up by acquisition all of the competitors. So there's two constraints. One is that they continue to gobble up competitors, and two, you have to be certified by the state fire marshal in order to install something like this. So Johnson Controls, their company model, their company shtick or whatever, they really are only interested in inspecting and writing reports and stuff like that. They don't really get into the installation bit. For example, we asked them to submit a proposal for this sometime in January, and I think it was like April 2nd when they finally got back to us. And so Ambassador Enterprises is is the proposed vendor that we will be going with. And I think the proposal is later in the, there it is, yeah. So I know this is a long presentation, but Ambassador or A&E has submitted all the right sensors, hardwire panel and stuff like that for all of the schools. And
And
so
this is just a reminder on the threshold for having to go through that whole process of procurement and RFP and all that, correct, Mr. Ryder?
exactly, yeah. And this was approved at a prior board meeting that we were going to be using some of the rollover and the security grant to pay for this. Oh, so there's the actual proposal. That's half of it, and then the other half is on the next page. And so of all the stuff, if you add the 115 to the 90, that's how and we're not going to go with the maintenance office at 8,000 there. So we come up with the 197, and then the security grant, it was $100,000, but we've already spent a little bit of that on other things. So we're going to use the remaining 86 to pay for this. And then from our rollover, 111,000 from our rollover. So our recommendation is to approve this proposal from A&E.
And then, of course, the final item is the actual purchase order. Any questions on that? Because that's a lot in that one item. Any questions on that before we move on to the rest of the consent agenda?
I do have a question. Does that rollover count as the locality match, or does the locality have to come back and match us with match it with additional funds at 25%?
No, the 25,000 is in that 111.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So 3.2 is the alarm system. Oh, excuse me, 3.3. Yeah, we just talked about that, didn't we? Sorry about that. Yes, 3.3 is minutes from the March 18th meeting. And then 3.4 is the minutes from our joint session with City Council. Are there any questions to either one of those items?
Madam Chair, unless there is an objection by a board member, I recommend that we approve items 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
I would like to vote on items 3.1, 3.2 separately.
Okay, so you would like to pull those two items?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's the reason for that?
Because I will need to abstain from one of the other
Okay.
consent agenda items.
Mr. Holt, would you like to rescind your motion so we can pull those?
I have a question. Would we be able to include 3.3 in this and only have 3.4 separate?
Are you going to need to abstain from 3.3?
No, but I
Okay,
thought he only wanted to separate 3.1 and 3.2.
Excuse me. Yeah, 3.4 is actually the one.
okay. So we can,
That's the, yeah.
okay, so what we need to do then, I would, I guess Mr. Holt would be amend the motion to vote solely on 3.1 through 3.3, if you are in agreement with that.
I am in total agreement.
Okay, so we have an amended motion to approve 3.1 through 3.3. Would anyone like to second that motion?
I second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions do have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. So now we have item 3.4. Do we have a motion in regards to that one?
I move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
A couple of seconds. Any discussion? Again, moving by ward, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, abstain.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry as well. All right, next up, we are down to finance and operations. Mr. Ryder, I think that would be your portion of the evening, if you would be so glad as to entertain us with that.
Thank you. Okay, so first up are the March financial statements. If you can, the first two slides are my boilerplate slides that are in them every month. Nothing changes. And this is the income statement we keep our eyes on. Everything's going according to plan. I mean, without going into every line item or any of the details, actually, the budget hasn't changed. All we did was add another month of expenditures. What I'll just simply point out is the projection of June 30, that bottom line number there, just if you could scroll up to, there we go. We're looking to be 703 negative, and our best projection right now is about 641. So Dr. Sterling and I have about $62,000 more of expenditures to find over and above what you see here. So that's I kind of set a threshold, like when it gets below 100, we really, it's getting close now. We're getting close to zero. So we'll be at the May 6th work session, we'll be presenting the April financials, and those two numbers there, hopefully they won't have changed too much, but the 641, I'm hoping to be closer to 680 or 690, something like that.
Mr. Ryder, this is Jerry at Ward 6. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm slow to understand the rollover from 2020. Would it be appropriate to list that as a revenue above state funding, or as a? Because to me, I don't understand. I keep thinking we're spending it to a deficit, but that money was allocated at some point, correct?
Yeah, what we're doing is the deficit is merely spending the accumulated rollover on the city's books. See, you see the local city appropriation all the way to the right under projection for is about 4,830,000. See,
Okay.
yeah, that's going to be $703,000 less than what I had to put in the budget. They're actually not going to give us that because it's going to come out of the savings. So that's why you have to be in a deficit.
I see. Okay.
Only when you're granted rollover.
And Mr. McCreary, to clarify, I kind of had the question as well, because I noticed that if you look under local, the city appropriation, and you look at the budget 2021 figure, it shows it at 5,533,000. And our actual budget for the year was 5,082,000. So I had noticed there was an increase in that, and that was when we actually were granted the rollover. And when they grant it to us, we have to increase our budget because they're allowing us that money back, but they never really give it to us. They keep it sitting over in a separate fund. So we have to realize it as part of the money we have to spend, but they don't technically give it to us. They keep possession of it. Okay. So we have to spend like under the projection where it has the 4.8 million. That's how much they really put in our pocket to spend. Mm-hmm. It's like taking a kid to the store where you go, hey, you've got $20 to spend, but you don't give them the $20. You say, you go get your items and bring them back, and then I'll pay for it. So that's what the city is doing with the rollover fund, is they're saying, hey, we got it over here and you spend it, but we're not physically going to give you possession of it.
Okay, so what we see on the funding on the first 4 lines, that's actual money received.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, under, you talking
So
under that?
the 703,000, that's a ghost fund, so to speak.
Right,
Okay,
right.
all right, okay.
Does that kind
Because
of
to me, I'm visualizing it as some kind of a funding, but we're always showing it down below as a deficit, so.
Yep.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, Jerry. The next one is the textbook fund. It's a separate funding from the state of Virginia, and we had a beginning balance, and we're going to try to get that spent down to about less than $100,000, but we haven't had any activity in March. The nutrition fund, it's fine. You know, we'll have a surplus there. That too is an isolated, restricted fund that can only be used for nutrition. And as long as we have a surplus, anything above an average of 3 months spending, we have to have a spend down plan. And I do anticipate that we will have to have a spend down plan at the end of June, but that's not entirely bad news. It's good news. And so the next. And so the next one is the overall income statement. And, you know, this really shouldn't be too much different from Fund 10, but it's the agglomeration of all the other funds. All right. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Ryder on that? All right, we can go right ahead to the next one, Mr. Ryder.
Okay, so the next thing's a very short, where we status on the budget. You know, the budget's a long process to create the thing for the next fiscal year. And the city is an integral partner and part of that process. At the March 22nd meeting, the school division asked for $5,082,000 for next year's lump sum from the city to run our operations. Later in the same evening, the city council at the regular meeting voted for $4.8 million. The vote was 3 no's and 4 yeses for the vote. And then, like a brief history, you know, we've had 5,037,000, 5,037,000. Last year was 5,082,000, and that's why we requested 5,082,000 for this year. So there's just a little difference of what the city is willing to give and what we're asking for. Other than that, the rest of the budget is coming along fine. However, so this was an income statement that in the first column, that's what we asked for on March 22nd. So then the city council voted on their funding. And so, you know, it's not final yet. We still have talks with the city, but you know, if it does turn out that, I guess this is the worst case because they've gone at 4.8. So if worst comes to worst, literally, the column on the right is how our budget will look next year. So on the left is what we're hoping for, on the right is what they're hoping for. This spring, I've adjusted the springtime now. I've moved it ahead in time. Today is April 15th, down there, that bottom blue box there. So we've got about 10 days until the city considers our budget. That's on April 26th. And I think after that, we have a work session on May 6th. And then on May 10th, when the city adopts their budget, they have adopted our lump sum funding. They've adopted our lump sum funding on May 10th. And so from between the 10th and the 20th, if there are any more adjustments we need to make to our budget outside of that, we can do that. That's why they adopt theirs first before we finally adopt ours on May 20th. Schedule hasn't changed since the last time I published it. This is a city calendar from the city council meeting, April 12th. That was just a calendar to show that the law firm of our law firm Sands Anderson, the to be determined in the middle there, they were working on the public notice of public hearing. One of the public hearings is for their budget. The other public hearing is for the bond issue that they're contemplating on May 10th. So they have 2 public hearings coming up. And that is it for a budget update. Any questions?
Not so much on this, Mr. Ryder, but I do have, have we gotten that March 31st ADM figure yet?
Yes, we have, but I don't have it with me. It was in the, it was between 965 and 985, and I needed to, because when you send it into the VDOE, they make adjustments. You know,
Right,
like this kid's being claimed by Richmond and you can't claim, but he lives with us and we have to argue back and forth. So, so they do have like a 2-week time period where the VDOE finalizes our final figure. So it's coming. It is less than last year's, but I really don't know until I get the calculator, how will that affect us?
gotcha.
You know?
I have a question. Other than the obvious, losing 250,000 or so dollars from that, are there any other ramifications that, there might be a ripple effect for the city giving us less than what they gave us last year? Because I was thinking about the grant that was mentioned earlier this evening. It was contingent upon, the city doing this. Do we have anything else that's contingent upon, the city giving us what they gave us before, or anything that would be detrimental for them giving us less than what they did before?
Yes, the city is required by law to give us to fund the local share. And in the state funding calculator, it calculates it for them and us. What is their local share? So they cannot by law go below that. The problem with our city is they've always funded us above that figure. So it doesn't have an effect. In theory, it does, Ms. Johnson, but not in practice.
Well, to answer your question, Ms. Johnson, one other place that could have an impact is with the American Rescue Plan Act, which is the next stream of CARES Act funding. It could have implications on that as well, because from my reading on that, there is a requirement for Title I schools that if there is a decrease at the state level to your per pupil funding, is how it's phrased, or at the local level, there is a decrease to your per pupil funding, then you will not receive that stream of money.
And what is that amount?
$5.4 million.
So then potentially it's more than 252,000. Potentially it's close to like 6 million.
Yeah, that's what I'm understanding.
Depending on if that does in fact decrease our per pupil funding, yes.
That's counterintuitive.
I agree.
If you spend more money, we'll give you even more money. Is that what they're saying?
Well, it's what they're trying to do is maintain your funding from all of your revenue sources, your local, your state, and your federal, because of course that's going to be an increase from federal level. But they're trying to make sure that at the state level and the local level, your funding is being at least level funded, so that you're maintaining, because the CARES funding is not some, like Mr. Ryder had alluded to in our joint session. The CARES funding is not meant to cover expenses that are consistent within your budget. It's for those expenses that are added on outside of what your normal budget requirements are. So you can't supplant into your budget and cover those expenses that you have consistent from year to year.
I see.
So then they're operating on like a baseline. You're at this baseline and then we'll go above your baseline. But if our baseline goes below, then they're saying they're not going to go above our baseline.
I see.
Essentially.
Did the city give reason for the decreased amount?
other than they're cutting like 1.5 million total. It was what I saw in their budget ad that went in the paper yesterday. That they do not have the funding to fund the various departments within the city at the capacity they did last year.
And I understand that place. However, we're talking about children and we're talking about their future. And we're talking about a potential of $6 million that wouldn't be allocated. I'm just tossing it out. Is there another way to rework budgets so that we're not experiencing that huge deficit? I mean, given that is the case, that if we're not level funded, then that would impact the CARES Act funding.
Yeah, it could have some potential negative impact. Of course, like I said,
How and when would we know that?
there would have to be calculations, because of course that per pupil per pupil funding runs off of ADM. So we'd have to have that ADM to calculate what that per pupil funding looks like, so that we know if there is in fact that decrease, and if this is the proper interpretation for how it's written. So let me preface by saying that we'd have to have the ADM to be able to run that calculation to see, is that actually a decrease going to cause a decrease in that per pupil funding. And on top of that, is that the correct interpretation? So when that notice came out back on the 24th, we did, the division did reach out to the Virginia Department of Education for some clarification on that, to make sure that we are in fact interpreting it correctly, and not that, you know, what their intention with the interpretation is. We want to make sure that the interpretation is correct, and not that they have another way that they intended for it to be interpreted. Mm-hmm. So there's a little more that has to be figured out on that before we'll actually know if that decrease will definitely impact and cause, as Ms. Johnson said, that ripple effect. So that's something that I know Mr. Ryder is on top of and looking into.
So basically, if our ADM, I'm sorry.
Go
ahead, Mr. McCreary.
I'm sorry. I was saying it looks like a 5% decrease. They decreased it by 5% roughly. So the rollover funds that I've been having trouble understanding, can that continue to be rolled over, or does it have to be spent this budget year, this fiscal year?
Typically, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ryder, those rollover funds are supposed to be spent in the year in which they're reallocated to us. I take that to be, that is correct.
Yes, that's correct. And this year was one of those strange times where we had a little bit of rollover from the prior year as well. And so what they did was they cleaned it out. The 451,000 that they allocated was all of the dollars that are rolling over to this year, bringing the balance to zero, the unexpended fund balance for the school division to zero. But you know, the city, Mr. McCreary, the city's made it clear that if we don't spend it, they're not going to give it to us. It's gone.
I understand. I was looking for a way to negotiate. I mean, if it would lessen that 5% cost. I mean, it would shrink that 5% reduction in this new budget.
Ms. Johnson, I think I heard you chime in as well.
So I was just wanting to make sure that I understood it correctly. So basically, if our ADM went down, then, and that took up for that 250,000, then we'd be sitting okay as far as what we understand the interpretation of that is.
From my interpretation, that would
Right.
be an accurate assessment. But I don't know if my interpretation is exactly correct.
Right, I understand.
And all of the full write-up of how the Stream 5 CARES Act funding is to be spent and the rules and regulations and allowable for that, they still aren't completely complete yet. So, I mean, we haven't even applied for it. So it's coming, and probably at a board meeting before this year is out, we'll have a full understanding of that. And Mr. McCreary, just to be clear, at the May 6th board meeting, I am going to give a special, I think a 1-slide presentation on the rollover that I created today for Ms. Phillips, and we went over that. And so I'll be going over a really good clear-cut example of how that works, the mechanics of it.
How much of the rollover is yet to be spent? Was it 60,000 roughly? Is that what we saw earlier?
No, 703,000.
No, remaining to be.
No, the remaining.
Oh, to remaining about 63,000 and change.
No, I was looking for a way to negotiate with them if they were able to apply that 60,000 and not do such a large reduction.
And actually, we kind of did that. If correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ryder, we actually kind of did that with the current year's budget, because we got 45,000, but we let them keep 45,000 of the previous year's rollover, if I remember that correctly.
Right.
We got $45,000 increase to our current fiscal year budget, but we let them keep 45,000 from the rollover from the prior year. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
So are the
I was just
rollover funds
suggesting,
kept in a separate account?
Yeah, they're on the city's books.
Hmm.
They're off of our financial statements. That's why it's kind of hard to understand, because you're looking at an income statement, but you're talking about something that's off income statement, as the accountants like to say, off balance sheet or off in. It's over there on their side of the books. That's why we have to be in constant harmony with their financial statements, so we always know what's going on with theirs and ours.
do you understand my rationale or what I'm suggesting?
Yeah, if we had carryover funds left over, if there was some way we could negotiate by allowing them to keep that, but increase.
Right. So instead of a 5% reduction, maybe it's in our proposed budget, the 252,000, maybe that gets only 2.5%. Maybe that's cut in half, 125,000.
Well, and the carryover is an interesting conversation when we get into conversations with those funds, because they don't automatically revert back to us. We have to ask for them back every year. And we have no capital improvement fund right now that's established. So, even as we move through this capital improvement committee process, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later, is that something that maybe we need to look at in the future, is instead of that rollover funds coming back to us, do we just ask for it to automatically revert into a capital improvement plan, so that fund would start building, so that we can start thinking about things? Because even when we have really what constitutes under a capital improvement, like we have to replace air conditioners, because we talked about that earlier in the year last year for this fiscal year. We've talked about the repairs and looking at the Charles Street gym. Those kind of things would technically fall under capital improvements, but we don't have any designated funding for that. It would just have to come out of our operating budget. So there's a lot of conversation that can be had around carryover funds, and you also risk, you know, when you have those conversations about allowing the city just to keep it in exchange for even just level funding of the school division, you run the risk of the train of thought then becoming, well, we'll level fund you every year, we just get the carryover back at the city level. So, I mean, it's a conversation that can be had, but that's up to the board as a whole. Does anybody
Well, I
have
think we need to consider all of our options, because the schools are in a recovery time, and a decrease, and I understand from the city's perspective, but doesn't seem like a decrease is favorable to the schools at this time.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that conversation, or any thoughts on that conversation, or anything that Mr. McCreary or anyone else has said?
Well, the concept of rollover makes a lot of sense. I mean, and years back, this was never an issue. If the school system had money left over, we would make a request from the city, and we always got it. So there was really no argument about, do you spend it this year or wait till next year, or what you want to do? And then the city's budget got a lot tighter, and I can understand their point of view. They're saying, well, if you have rollover, then you had too much money to start with. Well, we know that's not the case. But anyway, a lot of other states, if a school has surplus funds, as we call rollover, it automatically goes in, as Amy says, into some type of fund that stays within the school system, but is within their control. So
To me, that
anyway,
makes much more sense, especially if we're
I have
looking
another
at
question for
capital.
Mr. Ryder on a similar issue.
Sure, just hold on just a second, Mr. Holt. What were you saying,
Okay.
Mr. McCreary?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was agreeing with Mr. Holt that makes more sense when you have capital improvements to make later. To me, it shows good faith on the half of the division to show that we're saving money where we can, but looking, for future improvements as well.
And Mr. Holt, I'll jump back to you in just a second. And I agree. I think it's a great idea. Of course, that would be something that we would have to sit down, because I think the city actually pinned it in to their processes that we have to request that back, and that there's no guarantee with that. But I think that's a great conversation that as a board, we should actually have a discussion about that and decide if that is a way that we want to proceed in the future with rollover, if there is, carryover, if there is carryover funds at the end of each year, that we want it automatically designated into, if it is a school improvement fund, that's where it goes. The city has to have anyways a school fund set up, a special line item for funds to go into. There's nothing in it right now, but they have it set up. So would that be the appropriate place to park it and just have it automatically go into that every year? That is a great idea, and I think that is something that we need to consider. I would hesitate to jump and we do that and make that decision tonight, because I would like to see us get this capital improvement committee up and running, so that we kind of have an idea of the direction, And that way we know if that's, because I'd hate to piecemeal the requests to the city when it comes to capital improvements, but I do think that is a great suggestion and something that as a board we do need to entertain.
I agree.
Mr. Holt, where your other question?
My other question was, back when the General Assembly was in session, they seemed to be adamant that no school division would have less money for next year, even if their ADM dropped. And that was stated over and over by both houses, but I don't know if the final budget they approved and the one the governor signed had that provision in it. Do you know, Mr. Ryder?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the final approved budget from the governor.
Okay,
Once he signs it, that's it, and I'll be able to report out to the board as soon as it's out.
That actually, Mr. Holt, was a great question, because if the local funding drops and the state funding drops, then that's a double hit towards that per pupil funding. And that could be another factor that may drop us to where we actually do see a decrease in the per pupil funding when you combine the two.
I'll make a last comment about the rollover. If that benefit goes away, then everybody is going to be forced to spend up their money before the end of the year on stuff they don't really need, and that doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help us, it doesn't help the city, doesn't help the students. So I feel pretty confident that the city will work with us on that. And I agree, Amy, let's get, at some point, start a conversation about that.
Yeah, I think we really, tonight, I think that was really one thing that we have done, is we've at least started the conversation. So once we get this capital improvements committee really established and starting to dig in and do the work, I think that's one of the first things we need to start looking at. Dr. Sterling, we've kind of left you out of this conversation. Do you have anything that you wish to add to that? And it can be a simple no or yes.
No, it's excellent dialogue. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion in regards to the budget status?
Now, I may have missed this, and this is probably going to be my last comment, but we presented the budget at the 5-point whatever. Was there ever a discussion with the board and city council about a $252,000 decrease?
Short answer.
Prior to that board meeting, the same night that we had to, even in the joint session, I don't recall hearing anything about a decrease of $252,000.
I can say confidently there was no communication to me. The first that I heard about it was watching the city council meeting after the same night we had our joint session. That was the first that I heard about them funding us within their draft budget at the 4.8 instead of our requested 5.1.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or discussions in regards to the budget status? All right, hearing none, then next up is the insurance renewal.
Yes. Thank you. The package insurance, almost all entities have basically the same type of insurance. Group health is usually in a separate bucket all by itself because it has so many different risks. The rest of the coverages are commonly referred to as a package policy, which covers your building, contents, autos, and workers' comp. By far and away, workers' comp is always the largest share of your insurance. From this graph from our premiums last year, of our 142,000 in premiums, 83 of it's workers' comp alone. And followed by the property, and then a close third is the autos and buses. So every year, our group health insurance carrier, the package carrier, comes in with their quotes, and we have two companies giving us quotes this year. But I just wanted to briefly, inform everybody that in workers' comp premiums are based on 4 items. How do they come up? Why is that the most expensive? Well, it's based on our payroll. And that payroll is broke down by the risk factors, like an office worker is a lot cheaper and less risky than, say, a bus driver who's out on the road that could get in an accident or something. And the rates are set by the insurance department of the state. So the payroll times the rates. The 2 things that are kind of specific to each and every company or division is the experience modification and the premium discount. So the claims, the experience modification is based on our claims history specific to us. So the claims history is a rolling 3-year picture, not counting the year in. So there's not last year, but the prior 3 years is what our experience mod is based on. And the experience mod can be quite substantial for any company. For example, when you multiply by the state rates, you get a figure. And the figure can be multiplied by as high as 2, double, or a lot of them 1.5, 1.8, 1.1 and 1.05 is usually the figures that I've kind of been used to, unless you have some pretty bad claims. So here's real quick, I know that I always throw up a lot of numbers, but I can zero you in on just a couple of numbers that we're really concerned with. Change colors. So that the stuff to the left is how they're calculated, the payroll times the rates. And then you see that 1 point back in 2018, that 1.37. So the impact of the experience modification for our division is a 37% penalty for our claims. And those claims for that year were based on the 2014, 15, and 16. So it's not counting the year they're quoted, which is in 17. It's the prior 3 years. So unfortunately, I don't have claims history that goes back that far. But as you go to 2019, it's still 1.37 because that $500,000 of claims hadn't caught up to it yet. The next one, 2020, you can see the experience mod goes from 1.37 to 1.88, which is, that's a $47,000, penalty that we have to pay for our experience, or for our claims. So in fiscal year 2020, it was 1.88. Premium discounts are, I don't know, I think they're arbitrary based on the insurance carrier. If they want your business, how bad they want your business. I've never gotten any kind of like fixed percentage of what there are, or even how they're calculated. I'm just happy they show up on our statement. The next slide, we get now into the present and the future. This year we're still at 1.88, but look at the claims history. In 2017, we had $500,000 in claims. In 2018, we had 800,000 in claims, and 500 of that was one person, one claim. But good news, look at the 18 to 19, almost disappeared. We almost had no claim, so you can see that better days are ahead because, the 2019 claims were 46,000. Down in 2020, there were 6. And so now in 2021, which is this year now, we're at about 56,000. But you can see in 2023, the rolling 3 years is only going to be the 46 to 5 and whatever we've paid this year. So that I expect that 1.87 to drop to 1.1 or 1.15, something like that. But right now we're in the middle of the highest claims. So we have two companies interested in our business. Our incumbent vendor is Vacor. I would have given you more stats on these folks, but I couldn't dig out any of their financial statements off the internet. So they were established in 1993. The new vendor, new to us, they've been around since 1980, something called the Virginia Risk Sharing Association. And after I had created this thing, I did get both companies' financials, and the VRSA, they're about 3 to 4 times larger than Vacor. So when these folks send all their proposals in, I'll be presenting probably at the May 6th work session. So that's a quick little education on group health or package policies and how workers' comp premiums are calculated. Nothing to approve. Any questions on that? All righty. The bathroom project is moving along pretty much on schedule. Mosley Architects were selected, as you guys know. Their role is broken into 4 parts: the pre-bid work, the bid creation documents, which is huge, to conduct the bid and recommend to the Board of Education who the vendors are, and then get to it. So there's the Mosley Architects invoice or the quote over to the right. So the part 1 has been completed. We're about a third of the way through part 2. And so what we'll do is we'll put all this invoicing in to make sure it's done by June 30th. And then when the construction comes in, when those invoices come in, we will be putting them into this fiscal year or accruing them to make sure they hit this fiscal year. And so that was our original estimate from Windsor Homes. And so we're still actually waiting for the actual bid documents to be done by the architects. This is our best estimate at this time. But I've made it clear to the architects, we're not going to be too much far off 704,000. So a couple of issues came up. One was kind of interesting in that when we walked through and we noticed that all of the sinks over at the elementary school, you have 2 faucets left and right. Ordinarily, the left is hot. They all come from the same cold water line. So there's no hot waters to the sinks. So when we put in the touchless is going to just come out pouring out cold water. So we're going to be putting so that was the modification. My guess is $80,000. See there? all the water comes in through one pipe. So we're going to put hot water tanks in each of the maintenance closets and pipe those to the sink. So when the touchless things go on, it automatically mixes the hot and cold water to a particular temperature for little kids' hands. So they'll be washing their hands in warm water for proper hygiene. Mm-hmm. And then issue 2, we had selected a different type of sink that we wanted, a nice trough size sink, but we then ran into a further problem in that that would make our already non-ADA compliant bathrooms built in the 60s even more non-compliant, and we can't do that. So we're going to get the nice, touchless stuff, but it's going to be in the old white type sinks that we're used to seeing. So in conclusion, we're on task. Completion will be before the start of the next year, obviously, and the funding will be pulled from the proper streams that we've already allocated, and the Stream 2 funding. In that Stream 2 grant for the CARES funding, we've already allocated those dollars to this project. Any questions on toilets?
Mr. Ryder, this is Jerry in Ward 6.
Yes, sir.
This is backtracking earlier, but this reminded me a question regarding the alarm system. Looking at the proposal, it said it didn't cover like any repair, I guess, damage to walls or stuff like that. Is there any, do y'all anticipate any of those kind of repairs, and do we need to just have those budgeted?
Well, what we're doing, Jerry, is we're actually tearing out the sinks and tearing up the floors. So, we're replacing them anyway. So, but we don't anticipate any other than that surprise with the hot water, we didn't anticipate any other repairs to be made. The hot water thing was kind of the biggest surprise we had. And so-
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm confusing. I'm mixing two topics, actually. The question is not regarding the bathrooms, but it reminded me about the fire alarms.
Oh,
The alarm installation. If you don't mind me asking that question now, it's not about the
okay.
bathroom.
Oh, yeah, no, with that, no, because, you know, what the alarms that are there are going to be pulled out and they're going to be replaced with much more modern versions. So there's not like, no, there's no real unanticipated repairs for installing the new alarm system.
Oh, okay. I just noticed that in their proposal when this bathroom repair reminded me of that.
I think that was written in to cover themselves in case something happened and something got damaged.
Okay, I thought that also. Just wanted to clarify.
I have a question about the bathrooms. Are we grandfathered in? Is that why we're allowed to not be ADA compliant? And then I guess a second part to that would be, since we're renovating them anyway, is how difficult is it to make them ADA compliant? Because I had no idea that we weren't, in compliance. with
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yes, the Americans with Disabilities Act, I don't think was even in place in 1963 when this thing was started to be built. So we're non-compliant because of space, physical space. I mean, we would have to start knocking out walls of classrooms in order to enlarge this thing for wheelchairs to turn around. So it's just not feasible. And so the ADA rules are, if you're going to remodel bathrooms, you cannot make them more restrictive, because their opinion is they're restrictive enough. You don't want to take even more space away from them. So that's why we had to go back to the white sinks.
Okay, because I was wondering if there was something that said, if you remodel, then you have to bring them up to ADA compliance. But basically what you're saying is it can stay non-compliant, just not worse.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly
Okay.
it.
All right.
Yet another reason we need a new school building.
That's right.
Are the sinks the main issue? Other than that make it non-compliant?
Miss Moore, can you scroll back up to the diagram? Yep, that one. So that's the outlay of the current bathrooms and the designs of the current bathrooms that we do have. So, for instance, if you look at the first one, if that first sink was not there and the second sink was not there, then access to the bathroom would probably be okay, but we'd have no sinks in the bathroom. And then the second one is, that stall separation around that first stall is inhibitive. So we'd have to have no stall separation there. And then the third one is essentially the same thing. Either the sink or the stall partition would have to go. So it's not just the sinks, unfortunately.
It's the whole space. It's the whole four. It's the whole four walls of space. What you got jammed in there, right? All righty.
But overall, it's going to be better than it is now.
Yes, it'll be better than it is now.
All right.
All right.
Let's see, what else have we got? One more, I think, for you, Mr. Ryder, modular update.
Yep, one last thing. This one's a lot more pictures, and so very well. I said the modular units were installed in, and I didn't even have the year. So thank you, Tammy, for finding that for me. And so they were really, installed to relieve an overcrowding situation at the time. It provided for 14 classrooms in one modular unit and then 16 in another. It was much cheaper than obviously building onto the building, same as today. And so the 14 unit structure right now is not really being used for teaching classroom. We got a bunch of different offices and stuff. So in order for us to maintain the social distancing, we're going to be replacing the 14 unit structure. So yeah, picture tells 1,000 more kind of, that's the one side of the 14 unit modular. That's all mold and mildew on the outside, and that's the apron on the bottom there. Here's the doors to that same unit, a different wall. You can see it's all, molded over. The inside, doesn't look much better than the outside. So, and underneath it, we didn't even want to show you pictures of those. So this is probably what they looked like back in 2003. But so this is a brand new 4-unit classroom. Ours will be 14. So imagine this thing about 3 times longer than this. Bright and clean on the inside, beautiful classrooms. Playground not included. I mean, the nice, beautiful, bright orange playground in front of the modular, but we're looking at the modular in the background. So the modular units are there to expand the social distancing. There's the cost estimates on the left. That's from one vendor. I was waiting for the other guy to get his to me today. He never did get it to me, so I'm still working on that. So I got a second vendor. Obviously, over $1 million. The way we're not putting this out to RFP is both of these vendors have already put it out to RFP with. Well, this one was James Madison University, which is a municipality, and we can use their contract. The other guy's got another municipality that they put theirs out on. So once they get me their prices and the specs, we have demolition. We got to demo ours. That's no easy task either. You got to completely empty it out, take out every computer that you want, all the phones, everything, and then you got to cap off the utilities, and then somebody comes in and demos, destroys it and takes it away. And so there's the timetable there. So if you figure about 10 to 11 weeks, if I can get this thing going by, cap off the utilities and prep for demolition by June 15th, June, July, August, September, pretty close to the start of the school year. Pretty close. Fully funded out of CARES Act Stream 4. So tonight, all we're looking for is the recommendation that the board approve the installation of to replace the 14 modular unit rooms that we have now. But we still haven't figured out which vendor we're going to use.
Any questions, comments, or discussion in regards to the proposal to replace the modular classroom?
Yes. Other than cost, is there any reason why we're not also looking at the 16 unit one? Is that in remarkably better shape than that one that you showed us? Or is it because we're now going to be using this other one for social distancing that we can count that under the CARES funding, but the other one we wouldn't? I'm just wondering.
This one does, and with all the other uses that we've, the allowable uses of Stream 4, this one taps it out. But Stream 5, the $5.8 million for that thing would certainly pay for the 16 unit. And so we're not really going to get that, even in and approved probably until, probably the new fiscal year, maybe June. But we were going to be, thinking of that as a separate thing.
Is it about in the same shape as the one that you showed us?
I think so. Yeah. But we wanted to concentrate on the one in the worst condition first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's better to start and get something done than nothing done. So yeah.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? Hearing none, does anyone wish to make a motion in regards to the installation of the modular?
I move to approve the installation of a modular unit that contains 14 classrooms so that we can expand space for social distancing using the CARE Stream 4 funding.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye, and of course, nays and abstentions have the same opportunity.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Marshall Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. That motion does carry. And I will just reiterate, as was in the motion, that this is being funded not out of our regular budget. It is being funded with the CARES Act funding from Stream 4. All right. Anything else for us this evening, Mr. Ryder?
That is it. My voice is about gone, so thank you all very much.
Thank you very much as well. All right, next up is accountability and personnel.
Hold on, everyone. I can't see the screen. I think I messed myself up here. Okay, here we go.
Good evening,
All
Dr.
right,
Carter.
so we are in the heart of testing. And so I'm just going to briefly go over the testing, and we'll go school by school. So at SP Morton, because of COVID, we are adjusting for the parents that are hybrid and the parents that are students that are virtual. And so we are looking at going by grade level. And so as you see there, we're going to start off with the grade with the VA studies of May 4th through May 5th. We're going to look at reading May 6th through the 4th, and going to math will be the 12th of May, 12 through May 3rd, and then you have science. You have the 18th through the 5th of May, and then you have reading again 5 through 3 reading, and then you have 11 through 5 May grade reading 5th grade. And then in May again, you have the 4th grade again, and that will be on the 13th. So I kind of butchered that a little bit, but to basically tell you is that we broke that out into grade levels, and that we are accommodating this because if this, we have now, the state has rolled out the remote Virginia test. And that is for parents that feel that the parents that are currently virtual, that feel that they're uncomfortable in bringing their kids in person. And so what we're really striving for is to make sure that all kids come in for in-person testing. And so we're making strides to spread out kids and make sure that they come in, because really taking the Virginia remote testing is a substitute for the SOL. It does not count as the weight of an SOL, but they're doing it to show a measure of some type of growth, but we don't want that. We want to have the kids come in so that we can get a true measure of where they are, so that we can really start making plans for the summertime and next year, so that we can have an accurate data of where our kids stand right now. So let's move on. As you can see, makeup tests it's going to happen through these dates. You see where it says the 20th, and I just talked about the Virginia remote test. That will be from June 1st through the 25th. And that's once again for those parents that absolutely feel that they will not want their child to come in for in-person testing. But the rest of these dates are makeup dates. Continue on, Ms. Moore. Same thing for JPK. JPK, they're just focusing on math and reading this year left. And so again, I just gave you what has occurred and what will occur. Same scenario. We want to make sure that we can get all the students in, because at all costs, we want to avoid the Virginia remote testing, because at that point we would have to send kids an email. Somebody would have to, they got roughly 8 to 10 hours to take the test, and then they would have to give the scores back. And then we would have to do that for every student. That's quite a headache. And also it doesn't really give us accurate data for where the kids really are. Moving forward, Franklin, there is no change, because, you know, we're working on verified credits. So they're just moving along smoothly. And because the majority of the changes are really at the elementary school and the middle school level. The high school, there are really no changes. Moving forward, Ms. Moore. And as you can see, what's going on, I'm not going to read it all to you, but again, they're moving along nicely. And they've been able, the high school has, to their credit, they've really been able to get well over 95% participation during the pandemic and getting kids to come to in-person testing. So really kudos to Franklin High School for their diligence in really getting those kids in for testing. And as you can see, these are the summer testing dates. And questions or comments?
Yes. If you could go back to SP Morton.
Yes.
That was, I appreciate you gathering all of this and together, but this is really unclear to me.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what the dates are or the grades or, yeah, I'm just not sure.
Okay. So grade, it's supposed to say May 4th through May 5th. You have the Virginia studies. So they will be working on that. So the fifth graders, is really supposed to say the fifth graders on May 4th will actually be testing. And then you move to grade 6, go to the 6th of May. The fourth graders will be focusing on reading, and then math. That will be on May 12th. That would be for the third graders. And I apologize for this being convoluted slightly, Ms. Johnson, but also—
I mean, I would just, if I wanted to send a parent who had questions about it back to, you know, the board doctor, to the slide, I don't know that they'd understand it.
Yes. And I will definitely go back and clean that up. I got fancy and it got turned slightly, because it really was supposed to say, science on May 18th, the 5th grade. And so that really got turned around.
So the first, go ahead, Dr. Sterling.
Excuse me, Dr. Carter.
Yes.
Board members, we will redo this presentation in May, because it's very important that our parents have these dates, and they will be posted online. So if you please bear with us, we will bring this back to the board and to our community of stakeholders at the work session in May.
Thank you, Dr. Sterling. And Dr. Carter, I think if I can clarify, so with these dates as they are written, the first number is the actual date. The second number is the grade level.
Yes.
Okay. So that way, if anybody does go back before we have a chance to bring this back in May and someone's reviewing this, posted on our YouTube channel, that's what those two numbers are when you're looking at SP Morton Elementary. So like the first one, which is the kind of orangest grade, it's Virginia Studies. The 4 represents the date of the month of May that the testing will be done on. And then the 5th represents what grade level that is for.
Yes, it got turned around in the presentation. So I will correct that, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that from the board?
For the Virginia remote learning, are there proctors for that test, or how is the integrity of that test kept in place? Or you may not even know because it's something new.
The state says there's really no integrity. We just have to send out an email. We have to first test all the students. And then after that, we'll find out who the parents that refuse to have their parents come in. We send out an email giving the date, notifying that we'll give them for the Virginia remote test. We send an email out for that day. The kids jump on. We have somebody that monitors when they log on, and then they have basically the school day to complete that. And then they send a message will come across that says that they are complete. It's complete.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to, just in case we do have any parents that do go back and watch this video that aren't on with us for tonight's meeting, even though I do want parents to understand, even though your child may not right now be relying on this SOL for graduation or for their specific credits for high school, or maybe thinking, well, but this doesn't really have an impact on the accreditation for the school division for this year. This is still important because even taking these tests as we proceed into next year and look at next year's SOL testing, this kind of helps give us a baseline for where we're moving to for next year to compare to for next year. It also helps us gauge as a school division where we need to concentrate with our students for remediation, maybe for support in certain areas. So this is extremely important because it helps us give your students, your children, what they need educationally. Any other questions or comments in regards to the testing calendar? But Dr. Carter, thank you so much for that this evening.
Thank you.
Next up, we have gifted education. And I saw that lovely presentation that said Miss Tanika Ricks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And tonight we're going to be going over the rollout application for the Vanguard College Academy. All right, the Vanguard Early College Academy provides qualifying rising Franklin City Public Schools 8th grade students the opportunity to earn an associate's degree in computer science. Students are provided an implementation plan, which outlines the 61 credits required to complete an associate's degree. Many courses are taught at the school, at Franklin High School, by our teachers who are definitely qualified to teach the dual enrollment classes. However, students also attend courses at TCC. Students are able to earn an advanced high school diploma and also an associate's degree. So it's a great opportunity for our students. So we share that overview when we roll out the application. All right, so there are some revisions that we considered for this year due to the pandemic, and also some of the challenges that our students have had throughout the year. However, we also met with the gifted team, and also Dr. Sterling provided the team with feedback. And these are the following updates that we put in place for the application. We did change the degree from engineering to computer science this year. We have also added a payment plan option, considering some of our parents with economic situations during this time. Also, for the students' extracurricular and school organization activities, we understand that some students were not able to really get out in the community and to do the things that they normally do in their local nonprofit organizations, and also in faith-based organizations, or in school, period. So we are accepting letters from the community members from the previous year where they may have been engaged in different activities. This year, we considered a GPA adjustment from a 3.2 to a 3.0. We also have completed, made recommendations forms available online for our parents and the community members so that they can easily give us feedback on different leadership qualities and things that the students have done in the community. Also, now our application is now available online thanks to Clio, that the students can go in with support from the school counselors, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and they can fill in all the information they need to fill in and also complete their essay online. Next slide, Ms. Moore, thank you. So moving forward, one thing that we definitely when I met with the committee, one thing we wanted to really do was introduce our program to the 7th and 8th grade population early. So starting next year, we want to get students to let them be familiar with the program, let them be familiar of what are the expectations, what are they accountable for, and also share that information with the parents. So annually, we will have an information session beginning October 2021. Our next meeting, we will address the qualifying students with a parent meeting. And we have done that this year. April 13th, we had that meeting with our parents. This was qualifying rising 8th graders and parents participating in an informational session with myself, the gifted teacher, and also the school counselor at the middle school, which they received information about the financial agreement, parental access to student information, and resources. So we wanted to definitely give them, because that's something that we've been seeing across the program, is parents having access to information and being able to access their information through TCC at a expedited process. So we wanted to make sure that was in place to include student accountability and strategies of success. So we wanted to definitely map that out before students even begin to get in the program. And normally in a normal year, if you can see the highlighted dates, that's what we would practically do in a normal year. However, we did extend the time this year due to the demands of some of the students are facing. Also, we have our letter of recommendations I just talked about. We have a date for those to be turned in, which is April the 23rd. And again, our school counselors are helping with the community and they're helping with the parents, taking that extra mile to support with that process. And that's available online as well. Next slide, Ms. Moore. Okay, the application due date is April the 30th this year. Students are receiving support. Most of the students that qualify for the program at this time are coming in hybrid. So the school counselors are having the sessions where they set up with them in this computer lab to walk them through the application process, and also the gifted teachers supporting with that. For our students that are virtual, we're supporting with that via Zoom, having those information sessions, having them to pull up their screen and walking through the supports. And if we have to support parents on one-on-one basis with that, we're doing the same thing with them as well. The financial agreement, which is right there, which is the requirement, and also for parents that request it, we have that option to support them with a payment plan. And that date for that is June the 18th, 2021 is the due date for this year. So that's pretty much an overview of the rollout of our Vanguard applications for this year. Any questions?
Is $400 the only financial requirement, or that's just a deposit?
That's just a deposit at this time. It's also the other requirement is $100 per course that they take at Tidewater Community College, and the division pays the other portion of that.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? One thing I will add, if you don't mind, Ms. Ricks, I don't want any parent that may be considering this program to be discouraged because of the change from engineering to computer science, because looking at the courses that make up that associate's degree in computer science, for instance, if you look at Virginia Tech, not that I know anything about that, but if you look at Virginia Tech at the engineering program, everyone that goes into engineering at Virginia Tech has to go in for general engineering to start with their first year. And those courses that make up that computer science associate's degree are the same courses that a first-year student is going to take in the engineering program, as well as some of those second year courses as well. It just so happens I have a child that is in the engineering program at Virginia Tech, and looking at the Vanguard schedule for someone that maybe wanted to go into computer science engineering, which is what the degree is at Virginia Tech, they're pretty much exactly the same courses that they are taking at TCC for the Vanguard that they would be taking at Virginia Tech for those first few semesters. So I did want to say, don't think that just because it doesn't say engineering that those courses would not count to that.
Right, and that's a great point, Ms. Phillips. But even with our colleges, college boards who have those different, the different colleges that would accept multiple credits and support students that may, if they want to go to an engineering program beyond high school, there are the college board does have those colleges that would accept those credits and be able to evaluate them to support them with that change as they pursue their bachelor's degree and beyond that. So that's great as well. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or discussion on the Vanguard program?
How's the response been from parents?
Can you repeat?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. McCreary.
I'm sorry. I was asking what the response has been from parents.
With the program,
yeah.
Overall, parents have been providing positive reports. However, parents this year have really reached out to the college with communicating and attempting to reach out with communicating, gather information without their students. And one thing the college has been saying, hey, I want the students right beside the parents to gather information. So we have had informations with our parents to kind of work through some of those gaps with giving them the direct lines that they need to call for communication. We have set up like weekly check-ins with the gifted teacher who has been overseeing the Vanguard students that are enrolled. So she's been doing weekly check-ins with them. And we've also had to really work with TCC to ensure that we have just one dual enrollment specialist that's constantly in connection and collaboration with our gifted teacher. So those are some kinks that we had to work out. And from that situation, moving on from February to March, we have parents have really been thankful. They've been thankful for that information. And we also are still continuing to work with TCC to provide even more parental supports for our parents. So that is one thing that we have had some challenges with during the COVID and parents having to stay online for a while, but we have really worked as a team to work through those challenges.
That's good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Ms. Ricks, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Next up is the superintendent's overview. Dr. Sterling, I will turn that over to you.
Thank you so much. At this time, Ms. Burkhalter will be doing the superintendent's overview. Ms. Moore?
I think Ms. Burkhalter is having technical difficulties.
Okay, let's do the flip book.
Oh, there she is. She's coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Gotta love technology.
Thank you, Dr. Sterling. She keeps me on my toes. I would love to do this presentation this evening.
Good evening, Ms. Burkhalter.
Good evening. So we would like to congratulate you all see one of Dr. Sterling's favorite A words, amazing staff members. So So first we have Rob Eubanks with the technology team. As you know, Mr. Eubanks has been with Franklin City Public Schools for a while. He spends the bulk of his time at Franklin High School, but he also supports the district as well. So congratulations to Rob Eubanks. I actually saw him today and congratulated him on his support award. Our next staff member is Suzanne Bly, our current Teacher of the Year for a couple of more weeks until we announce our new Teacher of the Year. As you know, Ms. Bly is all things to Franklin High School, but also to Franklin City Public Schools. I call on her a lot to support us at central office as well. So this is definitely an award well-deserved for her as well, for her Instructional Support Award. Calvin Carter. So as you all know, he's come on board with you all as board members. Oh, you want me to stop right? Okay, thank you, Ms. Moore. He has come on board as one of our career switchers on the pathway. As you all know, Dr. Sterling is very passionate about giving opportunities to staff members and those who want to support the children in Franklin City Public Schools. And he's one of our star stories. So he's currently our music teacher. He used to be our former long-term third grade teacher. And he just, oh my gosh, with COVID, he has really stretched himself and his students and incorporated technology so much into the music classroom this year. So it is definitely a pleasure to recognize Mr. Carter for the Southside Virginia Regional Technology Consortium Award. And last but not least, we have our 2020-2021 Region Award of Merit. I'll lift my glasses at work. I can't see who that is. Ms. Moore.
Ms. Burkhalter, it was very funny that you said last but not least. I thought you were using that as a play on words since that is Coach Dave Lease.
Thank you. So Coach Lee, yes, I don't have my glasses. You all know I got new eye problems. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. It is definitely an honor to recognize him as well. I know when I came into the district, Mr. Phelps was very passionate with Dr. Sterling about ensuring we find ways to keep him on board at Franklin High School with the athletics department and just supporting the initiatives at Franklin High School. So it is definitely a pleasure and an honor to recognize Mr. Lease with this merit award. Are there any questions on our 4 honorees? Definitely a great representation of what Franklin City Public Schools has to offer. Congratulations to all 4.
Any questions or comments or discussion in regard to these?
Thank you. That concludes the superintendent's special presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burkhalter. And I will say congratulations to all 4 of our award recipients. All of those are stars within our division. And in the case of Mr. Lease, one of our retirees that we do miss greatly. So congratulations to all 4 of you. Anything else that you have for us this evening, Dr. Sterling?
No, ma'am.
All right. Next up is item number 8, which is business by school board members. So we will start with 8.1, business by school board members. Does anyone have anything to share with us?
I will go ahead, doctors.
I was just gonna ask Amy, does she want to share or does she want me to share?
I'll let you go ahead and share that if you would like.
Go ahead, Mr. Holt.
Mr. Holt, you want to kick us off?
I want to hear what you two want to share.
Well, I would assume, Dr. Shelton, you were referring to the gifted advisory.
Yes, we
meeting?
attended the gifted advisory meeting on Wednesday night, and it was very informational and informative. And I'm glad to see the progress of the students and that they have support and they are eager to move forward.
I agree, and Ms. Sherlock is full of energy when it comes to these kids, and the opportunities available to them, and her reach extends even beyond those that are within our walls. So she is still looking for any help that she can give to any potential any student within our walls, as well as those that have left us. So it was a really, really good meeting. Mr. Holt, I will defer to you in just a second. One other thing that I will add, right before this meeting, the Appomattox Regional Governor's School Board met and approved their new executive director to start July 1st. Her name is Dr. Megan Tenya. She is currently a principal with Savannah County Public Schools. She has background in gifted. She actually helped develop the gifted plan for Charlottesville County. She has a child that happens to be a student at ARG, so she's already a little bit familiar with the school. And it looks like she's going to bring a lot of energy and drive to that school. And she's looking to be there for the long haul. So we are excited to see her join that team. I think that's all I have that I can recall out of my head. Mr. Holt?
Jerry McQuarrie has done some really good work with Clyde Parker, gathering some historical information, documents, plans related to the Charles Street Gym. And Jerry and I put together a draft plan of action, and we will send that out to the board tomorrow. But I thank Jerry because he's very interested and very hardworking on this project, and I appreciate all his good work.
Very nice. Thank you to both of you. That's been something Mr. Holt can attest to. That's been something almost since the board was reorganized back at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. The Charles Street Gym has been almost a continuing topic for us. So it's good to see some movement on that.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else by board members?
I got to say something real quick about Coach Lease, and it'll take me about 30 seconds. But when my daughter was at Franklin High School, she told me about 9 o'clock one evening, by the way, Coach Lease is picking me up at 3:30 tomorrow morning. And I said, what? She said, yeah, we're going to Hampton or Newport News to pick up some Krispy Kreme donuts. And then they went over to Union Camp and got there before the shift changed at 6 o'clock and sold Krispy Kreme donuts to the workers at the mill coming and going to support the athletic program. So that's just a good example of what he does and what he has meant to the school system for many years.
And his reach extended beyond just being a coach. Many don't realize that he was also our driver's ed behind the wheel instructor for a while. And to give you a little bit of a funny, he actually, my oldest daughter, she was one of the last students that he had in behind the wheel, and that's probably why he decided to retire. But she comes home one day and I said, how'd it go? It was like her first day. And she said, well, Coach Lee said I am quite different from anyone else that he's had behind the wheel. I said, oh, yeah? She said, yeah. He said that everybody else likes to hug the yellow line, and I seem to hug the white line, and it kind of scares him, he said. So and he knew how to handle the kids, and he knew how, I mean, all the kids love him. All the staff that has loved him, and he's given of his own time, not just for what he was here to do, but even beyond. So yes, congratulations to him. That is a long time coming, and it is well deserved. Anything else by school board members? All right, up next, important dates to remember. We've got several items coming up. VSBA Master Board training is next Friday. That's our second session. Ms. Moore has sent out or is sending out our documents for that to us, so we should have them before first of the week. They will also be online as well, so we will have those, but she's sending out hard copies in case we actually want them to write down information on. Our next work session will be on Thursday, May 6th, and that is in person, work session in person. And then our regular meeting, of course, will be on May the 20th. And right after that, we will have our third. Remember, we have 4 Master Board training sessions, one more after the April one, we have one more in May, and then our final one on June 25th. And that is all that I can think of under important dates. Minutes, these are for review only. These are from our work session back on April the 1st. And if there is nothing else by board members, that brings us to everyone's least favorite item of the night, which is adjournment. Who wants to stay? Well, I mean, we kind of are staying because we're all virtual anyways, but do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
All right, since we've done roll call vote for the rest of the night, we'll just move by ward. And all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. And if you say nay or you abstain, then you have to stay logged on to this meeting all night.
Bob Holt, Ward 1, aye.
Rochelle Williams, Ward 4, aye.
Andrea Shelton, Ward 5, aye.
Jerry McCreary, Ward 6, aye.
Carrie Johnson at large, aye.
And Amy Phillips, Ward 2, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We will see you all in a couple of weeks for our May work session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.